Hi everyone, my name is Christina Nolan and I teach with the Department of Legal Studies at Purdue Global. And this video is created for specifically Unit 9 for the discussion board that specifically focuses on the client interview. Of course, if you're interested in family law or if you're just interested in learning about what is this client interview process in family law, you may enjoy this video. Um, so, um, we family law interviews are different. They are not like your typical intake interview. Obviously, you are going to be gathering facts, trying to decide what the interests are of the client in the case. But essentially, you are walking into someone's crisis, and this crisis is going to affect a variety of aspects of the individual's life, potentially their children, their finances, their housing, their personal property, their emotions. So most of these family law clients, they're not coming in on their best day. They could be anxious, scared, embarrassed, overwhelmed. Sometimes a little bit of everything. Divorce cases, custody disputes, child support, spousal support issues are just deeply personal matters. So you really have to think about the tone that you're going to use with this client. And really the first goal of this interview, yes, we're getting all these facts, we're establishing the lawyer-client relationship. By the way, the paralegal's doing the interview, which they certainly can. They are not going to be establishing the lawyer-client relationship. I know you know that, but I just want to make that clear. That will happen. The attorney will do that. Maybe has already done it. And then they're having the paralegal conduct the interview. And of course, they will review it later. So the first goal, though, is to build trust. If the client doesn't feel safe speaking to you, you're not going to get accurate information. If they don't trust you, if they think you're going to spread the information, they're going to change the facts or just not give you information. And so, as we know, without accurate information, the case suffers. So professionalism is important. Confidentiality, which is our duty, is important. Body language, even how you greet someone in the waiting room. Somebody, again, they're coming in on this, they're stressed out. It's rare to find a client in this case coming in for the initial interview that's totally calm, peaceful, happy to be there. So your role, especially in that this first interview, is extremely important. Obviously a lot of emotions. You just need to sort of approach things with patience and understanding. So when a client arrives, it's really important to just, introduce yourself clearly. They want to know who you are. What is your role? If you're a paralegal, make it very clear that you're not the attorney. You're not giving legal advice. You cannot give legal advice. This protects you. This protects the firm. This protects the client. And then you're going to set expectations. Let the client know what's going to happen in the meeting. Tell them you'll be asking questions. Let them know that you're going to be asking some questions that feel personal. Obviously in family law, they're all going to be personal. That's when you also explain to them the duty of confidentiality. So then again, that's where this relationship of trust is really, really important. So you're balancing the need to have this information, but then with the understanding that the client might be embarrassed about some of what they have to tell you. They might feel like a failure, they don't want to talk about their money with a stranger, but again, in order for the legal team to do their best for the client, they need as much information as possible. And that's going to ultimately help and benefit the client. Another thing, obviously, as part of this developing the relationship of trust, you are going to do what you have told your client you're going to do. Return phone calls, emails, texts. If you tell a client you're going to send them documents, please do that. If you need to create a to-do list, do that as well. Make sure that you don't forget anything that you told the client you told them you'd relay to the attorney. Take good notes. So a little bit about well, let me talk about professionalism first. Um, you know, this is actually something that I've struggled with in family law cases. I've done several professionally, and then also some pro bono cases. I personally do tend to lean towards the empath persona. It's not that I wanted to befriend the client, but what happens is it is, and this I'm thinking of one case when I was a brand new attorney. This person was a coworker, a legal secretary at my firm, and this was a family law issue, but it was with her boyfriend and her boyfriend's ex, and this was a child issue, a child custody issue. So it was really kind of deep in there, but so it was a little bit of a different situation because it was my friend, and of course her boyfriend. There was no confidentiality issue because he brought her into it, but the issue was that be constant because this is affecting your client on a day-to-day level. They could be calling you, emailing you. Oh, now they did this, now they did that. We all been in that situation with a friend. So this is where it's so important to set the boundary to keep the relationship on a professional level. You're not their friend. You may want to be, maybe they may be great, but you're not their friend in this context. And so you have to have time to handle your other cases. If you don't set that boundary, one case could soak up all your time. And again, not that you don't want to give that to them, but you have to be able to properly serve the rest of your clients. So active listening is very important here. Clients will often start with this long narrative. They could jump back and forth in time. They may mix emotional grievances with legal issues. It's really going to be hard to do this, but you cannot interrupt them. You have to listen long enough to understand the structure of the problem. Your client is not going to relay that story to you in this organized and, lovely fashion where you can just like, oh, this is what happened. And you just put it into a document and it's done. It's up to you to organize their story. Pay close attention, figure out how you're going to note take. What works best for that client. They may, if they see you typing, they're just going to feel like they're talking into the air. They might be looking at you for reactions, and obviously you're not going to be shocked at anything they tell you. You're not going to be visibly shocked. You're going to maintain that professionalism, but you're going to actively listen. So you're basically building a timeline for that client. What happened here? And again, they're giving you the information, they know it, but you're organizing it for them. So here are some guidelines for active listening. Provide feedback. I think this one is important. It shows them that you're listening. You can empathize with your clients too. You don't, in fact, you should. If they tell you something horrible that was done to them, you're not just going to sit there like, with no emotion. Obviously you're not going to react, but in a way that like, oh my gosh, but you'll calmly empathize with them. You'll acknowledge that they've been through something difficult. Again, this is building that relationship of trust with them. And this initial interview can set the tone for the whole relationship. So some of the things you're building the timeline. When did the parties marry? When did they separate? Are there kids? Prior court orders. You're going to want to make sure, you don't necessarily need to have a format, everything scripted out, but you also do need to ask some questions that you can't leave that interview without getting the information. Again, here's a little bit about understanding the emotional aspects of law. They can be in this sort of really devastating part of their life. So, you're there to take the stress of the process off of them. You're not their counselor or therapist, of course. And of course, if you see a need, you can make a referral to them. Like, You're providing emotional support in the sense of don't worry about the court process. I know what I'm doing. I'm going to get you what you need. I'm going to handle that. You're giving that stress to me. So it's a limited manner. But you can acknowledge their feelings, give them an opportunity to express themselves. But if you see a need for more, refer them to a therapist, refer them to a support group. Most family law offices have, trusted providers, and they would just give it to them. You're not the therapist, though. You're not even qualified. And if there is, the paralegal believes that there needs to be support services, obviously you're going to check with the supervising attorney, and you're never going to talk down to a client. Paralegal can, if you want to be proactive, maybe you can compile a list of some resources for the client, show them to the supervising attorney, encourage the client to explore their medical insurance. Maybe there's something that they can access for free. Create the list of resources in the firm's database, update it. That way everyone has the benefit. You certainly don't want to give the client a number to, something that's disconnected. That's gonna be very, that could upset them. You can have a list of a variety of services, 12-step groups, domestic violence groups, displaced homemaker services, mental health clinics, all sorts of services that are available. Clients can also, look at the list. Oh, I didn't know that. Maybe that would be helpful to me. I didn't know that existed. So you are also this great resource here. A client intake form is always helpful. This is a paper version of the form, but obviously family law firms will have an online version. So a strong client interview is going to collect 3 major categories of information: background and relationship history, children and custody related facts, financial information. This is sort of key to this interview. So again, here are some of the purposes. You're introducing the client to the firm. If the lawyer is conducting the interview, they'll give legal advice. It's possible you'll interview the client and then the lawyer will come in later. And this isn't the final meeting. You don't have to get every single bit of information. This is really that introduction. And again, the most important goal is to establish that relationship of trust and confidence. If the attorney is going to be stepping in, they'll discuss fees, fee payment arrangement, scope of representation. The attorney will assess the client's needs. And then again, this first meeting will give the lawyer enough information to begin the legal action. So they'll be able to hopefully file something. Again, what is the definition of legal advice? You are applying the law to a particular client's particular circumstances and either predicting an outcome or advising the client to take a particular course of action. Only a lawyer can do that. A paralegal may relay legal advice from the lawyer to the client. You can only relay. If they have further questions, you have to refer them to the lawyer. They can provide non-legal advice, and they can give information by describing the law. Once the paralegal has applied the specific facts of the client's case, then they've crossed the line into UPL. So don't ever do that. So here's some basics. The client interview: greet the client with a smile and a handshake, offer a drink, put them at ease, explain your role. Initially, you may not want to take notes, but whatever you end up finding is your best strategy, they may not want to be recorded. So then you may have to take notes, but balance it. Again, you can use that intake form, but moving from from, hey, how are you doing, to the form could just make you seem uncaring, like you're businesslike. I mean, you are you do want to be businesslike, but you also want to, act like you care. Open-ended questions are great. Then you narrow the issues. When you conclude the interview, you can tell the client what will happen next. other kinds of information that you might want to know about. Here's some of the basic information. But you also need to know about prior marriages, prenuptials, existing court orders, domestic violence concerns. Domestic violence would probably be maybe my number one question, because you want to clear that up. You want to take care of that, do something about that immediately. Are there any pending criminal matters? You never know. So you need to know everything. Okay, so the financial worksheet. This is something that you can give the client to take home. You can ask them questions. Let them think about it, though. This could be a little bit time consuming. Let them take the form home. Maybe then you can have a follow-up meeting just to discuss the financials. But let them look at their information. Let me just stick on that. So, a couple other things I was thinking about. You have to be the driver of the interview. The paralegal has to drive the interview, or the lawyer. Because if you are just on this emotional runaway train, there's no structure, the interview is gonna be wasted. But if you try to be too controlling, the client could shut down. So you're balancing things out. Let them tell their story, right? Get it out. Maybe you're not taking notes at this point. And then once they've gotten it out, you've acknowledged their feelings. You're like, okay, this is good to know. Thank you for telling me. I appreciate you. And I would also, if there is a domestic violence issue and a safety concern, you're gonna have to address that. That may take over the meeting and end the meeting, frankly, because you're gonna need to focus on, okay, let's get this person in a safe situation. But let's say, that was taken care of, or there's no concern. Then you're going to continue with the meeting. And then, so they've told their story, you're going to transition to like, okay, thank you. I'm going to ask you some more specific questions so we can make sure we have everything the attorney will need. And then you can let them know, because we've probably seen this in the doctor's office, because now doctors have moved to this electronic file system, and they've got their own forms, and so they always ask for permission. And it's harder for doctors to do that because they're used to looking face to face, but at the same time, it is better to have that face-to-face conversation, but you also don't want them to forget your information. So I'm actually, okay, if you need to type, how can you remember all this stuff? Sort of explain that to the client. I'm not trying to ignore you. I don't want you to have to go through this story several times. I want to just take this information down and, I don't have to ask you again. So I will be taking some limited notes. Okay, so, and then, so if you've thought ahead, with the financial worksheet, if you've thought ahead, or if it's a standard practice for your firm, maybe they did bring a lot of their paper financials with them. So that's nice. So you could always email them beforehand. Hey, could you bring this to the interview? And some very organized people will bring everything on your list. Most will not. Oh, I forgot about that. I've got to dig this out. I found this, but not that. That's great. As long as, you can have that discussion. But then, know what you need. Maybe you'll have a document where you check things off. Bring this, and then they can take it with them. You'll have an email that goes out afterwards. Again, if your client is getting emotional during the interview, they may be this very strong person, all of a sudden they break down. You're staying neutral, you're not judging, you're compassionate, but you are not the therapist. So you can say things like, I understand this is difficult. Make sure the attorney sees the information. You're not fixing the situation, their emotional situation. You're fixing the legal situation. And you can always go back to, let us take the stress of this case away for you, so then you can focus on what you need to do for yourself and your family. So, another thing I want to add to, especially in this day and age, is a client who is being stalked by their spouse or whoever is involved in this situation. You also have to be aware of the paralegal, the lawyer's safety. I was doing a termination of parental rights hearing for the state of Missouri many years ago, and the father, and in this case, these kids have been in foster care for like 12 years. The father came to the hearing, but he actually, no, he didn't come to the hearing. He threatened to come to the hearing and engage in violence. And this was like 20 years ago. So this was not common then. And of course, he was served. So it was like you have to go, he's supposed to go to protect his rights. But then he said he was going to come, but he was going to engage in violence. So they had a lot of extra security that day, because and of course, when that threat was received, it was immediately relayed to the courthouse for the purposes of keeping everyone safe. There was extra security. He never showed up. But as we know, you have to take these threats seriously. So if there is domestic violence, obviously you want to get that client safe and you want to make sure they're as safe as possible. You have a responsibility to keep the law firm and anyone who works at the law firm safe. Not you're not protecting it, but any security issues, any threats have to be relayed immediately to the supervising attorney. Let them handle it. And then you want to have an ending to the interview. You don't just say, okay, bye. You are explaining next steps. What's going to happen next? What do you need from them? What do they need from you? You could give an overview of what you've learned. Don't overwhelm them here. You're just sort of clarifying, what documents are needed. Again, handing that little piece of paper with documents checked off. I'll follow up with an email. Explain how communication will work moving forward. Do you want to be emailed, texted, phone calls? What do they prefer? When should you not contact them? Clients will leave calmer when they know what's going to happen next. They'll be like, okay. So it's not just an intake. This is where you're setting the tone for the relationship. And again, just to sum things up, family law interviews require structure, empathy, neutrality, no judgment, and then attention to detail. You're doing this all at the same time. And again, being professional, building the relationship of trust. But, honestly, if you're taking this family law course, if you are getting your associates or your bachelor's from Purdue Global, you've taken all the courses. You're going to be very good at this. So I'm really happy for your whether you're an attorney or a paralegal. I'm happy for your future clients. They're going to be getting empathetic, knowledgeable people who pay close attention to detail. So thank you all. I hope you enjoyed this, and I hope you continue to enjoy the family law class. If you're taking it, if you're not taking it, maybe you want to take it now. So again, thank you so much. And I hope you've enjoyed this.